Every system is perfectly designed to get the results it achieves. That's what we have to appreciate. These systems, if people say, well, how do we fix them? They're not broken. They're designed to produce exactly what you see.
Mm-hmm.
There's no fixing them. There really isn't, because they're perfectly designed. We need new systems, right? These systems, as they're set up, are designed to do exactly what they're supposed to do. Women have a certain position, people of color have a certain position, white people have a certain position. When you look at law enforcement, I can't tell you how many people have said to me, how do we fix it, Joy? How do we fix it? I said, you can't fix it. You know that policing, for example, in America, it came from slave patrols.
I'm
The
not
function,
surprised
the
anymore.
right. So the actual, it where it was derived was terrorism. They were terrorizing enslaved people that had been freed for fear that there was going to be a revolt. It never happened. You realize that they still punish us over this notion of fear of what we're going to do, because and that's their pathology. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that really is their pathology. But if it actually came from slave patrols, what makes you think it's there to protect you? It's not designed to protect you. It may occasionally, but that's not what it's designed to do.
Welcome to the Jaybe Show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you guys here on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. Today is October 27th, 2024. My name is James Fauntleroy, and welcome back to all of you. It is so good to see all of you. Yes, last week you guys did not get to see me because I was under the weather. So I had to take a few days just to be able to recover. Thank you very much for everybody who has gave me some well wishes from that. Deeply appreciated, but so good to see all of you nonetheless. Just to let you guys know, every single Sunday on RBN here at 1 p.m. Eastern, you can find me here, as well as on the Sabby and JB show on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. Also, you guys can find me on my own personal channel, the JB Font channel, every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, where I do interviews, news, and I talk about all things either geopolitical or domestic issues as well. So you guys have that there. Now, while we're at it, if you have not already, go ahead and give a like. What this does is that it helps us to be able to reach more people, to help inform, encourage, and activate. This is what is important to us, especially here at RBN. And I'll be getting in a little bit more into that a little bit later as well in the show, because I think this is a really important topic to be able to bring this to the fore, especially in this turbulent election season. So we're going to be talking about that. By the way, if you have not already, have you joined our mailing list? You can actually do so by going to revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. And this gives you email notifications whenever we go live, upload clips, or have any articles that are written. So you guys can go there for that. Thank you so very much. And also, for serious inquiries only, though, but if you would like to get in contact with us, you can get in contact with us by going to our email at revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com. This gives you access to us to be able to give us any stories, if you guys want to give some any encouraging words, or if you guys say, hey, JB, I noticed you had this issue with your camera, I noticed you had this issue with your sound, or here's some tips that we can offer, things like that, right? So thank you very much for all of that. So good to see you here. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the comments in the chat first, just to say hello and our salutations. I'm going to check on the Rumble side as well as the Rockfin side, just checking to see we're good on Rockfin. And from what I can tell, I think we're good on the Rumble side for the most part. We're going to be saying hello to Indie News on the Rumble side. Says support independent media. Yes, Indie News Network, they do great work. They've also been very instrumental in helping us in the background to, keep on the right track as far as tips and advice. So thank you very much. Please make sure to follow Indie News Network as well. And yes, I'm an honoree of the Indie Media Award. So thank you very much for that. And they actually shared their Substack for the Indie Media Awards as well on their Substack for RBN as well as my channel as well. So thank you so very much for that. We also have CBC Voter coming in saying happy Sunday at Jaybe. Good to see you, CBC Voter. I got my T here. I didn't know I can reach that pitch, but here we go. So nice to have you. We have M. Flournoy says, I adore and respect this woman. Yes, Dr. Joy DeGruy. She is a renowned scientist, not political scientist, social scientist. And her lecture on post-traumatic slave syndrome is something I think that every single person, especially Americans, need to listen to, because it really shows the pathology of slavery and how it has spilled over into each generation in the form of trauma, and how it affects us and how we act and react as Black Americans down to this day. So if you guys have not, I highly recommend that you listen to her lecture on post-traumatic slave syndrome. It really gets deep into the science and as to why we are the way we are to this day, and how we have had to adapt in order to survive. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to play her, is because she was talking about systems and how systems are actually perfectly designed for what they are intended to do. And we're going to keep going back to that because we're going to be discussing systems today. Systems is going to be part of the main portion of both of our segments that we're going to be talking about today. So thank you very much for that. Donald Trump grabbed him by the you-know-what. Trump says, nice shirt and tie, man. Looking sharp, brother. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it very much. Good to see you in the chat as well. Jesse Man says, what's good, brother? So good to see you. Yes, good to see you, Jesse. Nice to have you in here. All right, we have Melissa Brooke DeHart says, hi, Jaybe. Hello, Melissa. Good to see you. Yeah, Chip Walter says, hello, RBN and Jaybe. Good to see you, Chip. Got a Chip in here. Just can't have one. Eric NYC says, hello, comrades. Good to see you, Eric. And nice to have you in here as well. Roger Meadow says, that was Doc Joy. She changed her look. I remember her with her black hair and locks. My, how the years fly by. Yeah, Dr. Joy DeGruy. She's pretty remarkable. I would love to actually have her on my show to be able to have a conversation with her. She's brilliant. And I would love to be able to just be like that proverbial kid that's crisscross applesauce on the magic carpet, just listening intently to every word she has to teach. So I think that would be great. But yeah, I would love to be able to have a conversation with her. I remember was it last year? She was on a podcast called Man Enough. And she was talking about really the pathology and the trauma of Black men and boys, especially Black American men and boys, and how we developed over time, and how that was, a lot of times holdovers from slavery. Like, for instance, and some people are going to get mad at me for this, some people are going to disagree with me, but it is what it is. I keep thinking about, like, for instance, spanking is really just a holdover in the Black community from slavery. At least that's what I think it is. And really, it's a colonial European construct that was passed on to us. And we somehow think that that's something that my mama did it, my daddy did it, and so I do it. And look at me, I turned out all right. And so it's so many different things, right, that we don't realize that are holdovers from slavery. Hell, and people will say, well, you guys tie everything to race. Well, because everything's racist. everything's racist because everything's classist, and everything's classist because it's because of capitalism. And when you think about it, for instance, ice cream has racial dealings. Because if you think about it, the original ice cream flavor was vanilla, but the vanilla that we actually used to have came from Madagascar. But the thing is, because it was so expensive, it was only be able to be given to white people. And the person who actually created ice cream in the first place was actually a black man. But we couldn't partake of vanilla flavored ice cream because it came from Madagascar. So guess what? We had to come up with our own flavor. This is why black people love butter pecan ice cream so much, because that was our original flavor made for black people. And a lot of times people don't realize everything's tied to race. We're going to have fun on this show today. We're going to talk. We have Corvid Ravenscraft says, love and forehead kisses to you, Jaybe. Love and forehead kisses to you too. All right. And then Turt Ferguson says, no, not ice cream too. Look at that picture. All right. So what are we talking about today? I've already blabbered on long enough, but we're going to get into the subject for today. We're going to be talking about two subjects today. We're going to be talking about reparations for experiments and forgetting the poor. These are two subjects that I think we're going to be talking about. And like I said, we're going to be discussing systems today and what also can be done about systems. So we're going to get into this right now. So Black people, we have endured much, especially those of us who are Black Americans, descendants of slavery in this country, freedmen, what have you. You can use whatever term that you wish that, is afforded to people like myself, right? And when you think about the carceral system, we always talk about how they're treated when it comes to their rights, how they're treated when it comes to recreation, how they're treated when it comes to food, how they're treated when it comes to sentencing. We talk about all these different things, but a lot of times people don't really talk about the medical. We don't talk about that when it comes to how felons and inmates and people who are caught up in the carceral system are treated. And I think it's important to talk about this because when we don't want to sweep this under the rug, right? And because of this, I think that there's another line that needs to be added in the reparations column. Let's get into it. So I want to share this video really quick. I want to get into this video really quick and we'll get into the primary story. What in the world is going on with this? Why is this down here? Oh, well, I can still see it. So let me go here. Let me see. Do I have it up? I could have swore I had it up. Yeah, I have it here. And this is actually going to be talking about experimentation in the prison system. This is going to be a short video, but let's start off with this.
In the early 20th century, medical experimentation on prisoners was not uncommon. But one doctor, Dr. Leo Stanley, took it to a disturbing level. From 1913 to 1951, Dr. Stanley, chief surgeon at San Quentin Prison, used prisoners as test subjects in a variety of bizarre medical experiments. These experiments included sterilization and potential treatments for the Spanish flu. In one particularly disturbing experiment, Dr. Stanley performed testicle transplants on living prisoners using testicles from executed prisoners and, in some cases, from goats and boars.
So if you haven't realized, these are some of the gruesome details of these medical experiments that were done in prison. Now, I want to also go by, because a lot of people will say, well, they're prisoners, they're inmates, they've done something wrong, right? We're also talking about things that happened during Jim Crow, where even just looking at a white person the wrong way can land you in prison. There's things like, I'm blanking on the word, but if you're just sitting or standing without going to a particular place, I think it's called vagrancy, and you don't necessarily have a job, that was weird. Loitering, exactly. Thank you very much. If you're just not doing anything whatsoever that would deem you, it's not really criminal activity, you can still get taken in. You can get taken in for drinking in the wrong water fountain, or going to use the wrong bathroom, or going through the front entrance of an establishment, or eating at an establishment that's deemed white only. So many reasons for you to be incarcerated that to us would seem, beyond the pale today. And yet they go to prison. And because of that, now they are subject to, amoral, immoral, horrible monsters like this doctor. And they're subject to these type of experiments where they'll do very extremely excruciating experiments on things like testicle transplantation. So you can see that it's not just, when we talk about reparations, we're not just talking about for slavery. We're not just talking about, only slavery. We're talking about things like Jim Crow. We're talking about things like the carceral system, like where this has happened. This is what we're talking about. And the reason why I used Dr. Joy DeGrew's clip about talking about systems is because this was part of the system. This isn't some individualistic thing. This isn't just some thing where it's like, it happened in the past and it's over. These things still continue to happen. And a lot of the people that this happened to are still alive to this day. So this is why this subject's important. Let's continue on.
These experiments, performed without proper oversight or regulation, led to significant abuse and harm for the prisoners involved. Today, we have strict ethical guidelines in place to protect the rights and autonomy of all research participants. The experiments performed by Dr. Stanley were a violation of human rights and serve as a reminder of the importance of ethical conduct in medical research.
Let me ask you this before I get to the end of what this person said. Do human rights apply to inmates and people incarcerated? If you answered anything but a yes, then you need to reevaluate your humanity. They are humans too. And you can say, well, they committed these crimes and things like that. And it's like, yes. But just because they committed these crimes doesn't mean that we have to divorce ourselves from our humanity when it comes to correction and rehabilitation, which is really what we're supposed to be doing. What we're supposed to do in order to change a human so that they become better versions of what they were. But our system is not focused on that. And it never was. Because like Dr. Joy DeGruy said, systems are designed exactly how they're supposed to be. The system of our carceral state, the carceral system, is designed in such a way where it makes examples out of the slaves that it takes in so that you stay in line and do what you need to do in order to stay exploited. The carceral system is based on slavery. Because remember what the 13th Amendment said. The 13th Amendment said that slavery shall not be permitted within the United States except as punishment for a crime. So therefore, you can reasonably conclude that every single person incarcerated in this country is actually a slave. You can reasonably conclude that because slavery is an exception within our Constitution when it comes to people incarcerated. So therefore, whatever work they do is really slavery. And if they're not doing any slave labor at that point in time, they are the reserve slave labor within our country. And you can say we don't have slave labor, but guess what? You can look at McDonald's, Wendy's, Victoria's Secret, right? American Airlines, all these companies utilize them. And guess what? Just because a sticker says made in America doesn't mean it wasn't made by slavery in America. And so here's the thing. This also means experimentation that also could be funded by our colleges as well as our pharmaceutical and medical industries. Meaning some of the medications, some of the procedures were studied on inmates, and the results of those studies were used in order to develop certain procedures, medications, and what have you, in order for you. And it was done in a very unethical fashion. I like what they say at the end here.
It is essential to remember that the past medical experiments, such as the one you've described, performed on prisoners were in violation of human rights and were unethical. They were not in line with today's ethical guidelines and regulations, and their purpose is to serve as a reminder for the importance of ethical conduct in medical research and to learn from past mistakes.
So, with that being said, I think it will behoove us to give repair to people who have had to endure that. Well, they're looking for that now. Let me share this article because that's exactly what they're looking for. So, let's go here. So, 50 years after Philadelphia halted prison medical testing, families seek reparations. So, here we go. Let me enlarge this just so that everybody can read it well. So So it said 50 years ago, Philadelphia prison officials ended a medical testing program that had allowed an Ivy League researcher to conduct human testing on incarcerated people, many of them Black, for decades. Now, survivors of the program and their descendants want reparations. I didn't say some shade tree quack doctor that was doing it. This was an Ivy League researcher. This goes all the way to the top. It's deep. It's a system. And this is why we need to discuss it. Shall we continue? Thousands of people at Holmesburg Prison were exposed to painful skin tests, anesthesia-free surgery, harmful radiation, and mind-altering drugs for research on everything from hair dye, detergent, and other household goods to chemical warfare agents and dioxins. In exchange, they might receive $1 a day in pocket change they used to buy commissary items or try to make bail. Here's the thing. Did you know that some detergents were made with a substance called lye, L-Y-E, lye? Have you seen what lye does to skin? It will burn your skin all the way down to the muscle. They use that in detergents. Painful skin tests, anesthesia-free surgeries, basically doing surgeries with no anesthesia. Some of us freak out just from getting an IV put in. And you mean to tell me that they're doing surgery without anesthesia on these inmates for research? And then from all that trauma that's passed down on all of us, you're saying, oh, well, you didn't go through it, so you don't deserve reparations. Let's continue. Herbert Rice said, we were fertile ground for them people. He said it was just like dangling a carrot in front of a rabbit. Herbert Rice says he's a retired city worker from Philadelphia who said he had a lifelong psychiatric problems after taking an unknown drug at Holmesburg in the late 1960s that caused him to hallucinate. You don't think that these psychiatric problems didn't have an effect on him and his family? On his kids? That caused pain and trauma and turmoil? You don't think it didn't affect his work? Or how well he could do? You don't think if somebody wanted to try to go back to school, it wouldn't affect them in that way? It's very deeply encompassing when you think about it. Let's continue. It says the city and University of Pennsylvania have issued formal apologies in recent years. Lawsuits have been mostly unsuccessful except for a few small settlements. On Wednesday, families at Penn Law School event are set to seek reparations from the school and pharmaceutical companies that they say benefited from Cold War era research. This is Cold War era, meaning our grandparents and some of our parents. This is not so far back in the day where it's like, oh, everybody's dead. No. These people are still alive. They're still living, dealing with the ramifications of this type of stuff. So the University of Pennsylvania spokesperson said to the school had no comment on the push for reparations. The testing was led by Albert M. Klingman, a University of Pennsylvania dermatologist with research ties to the Army, the CIA, and the pharmaceutical industry, according to author Alan Hornblum, who ran an adult literacy program at Holmesburg in the 1970s and saw the effects firsthand. So look at this. This goes all the way up to the Army, the CIA, and the pharmaceutical industry. When I said it's systemic, I mean it is systemic. And people don't think we have a claim for wanting repair to these damages? All right. Says medical testing in prisons were pervasive in the 1960s, with radiation studies conducted on people incarcerated in Washington and Oregon, cancer studies in Ohio, and flash burn studies in Virginia. Human testing was also conducted on children in institutions, hospital patients, and other vulnerable populations in much of the 20th century. Children, meaning a lot of these kids are still alive with that trauma that had been given to them from these experiments. It says the tide turned in the early 1970s when outrage over the Tuskegee syphilis study, in which the United States government let Black men go untreated for syphilis to study the disease's impact, sparked an evolution in medical ethics. Klingman defended his work until his death in 2010. Yes. Because the thing is, like, you talk to Black people, people are like, well, why do Black people don't trust the medical industry that much? This is why. Because you experimented on us unethically, and then we had to bear the brunt of the trauma from the experiments. We had to bear the brunt of the trauma from the abuse, from the human rights abuses that you have done to us. So therefore, we don't trust you. Any reason why there's a lot of us that didn't want to get the jab during the pandemic? I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to protect ourselves medically, but there are reasons for why we're so apprehensive about doing so. It says he is credited with being the first dermatologist to show a link between sun exposure and wrinkles. He patented retin A, a vitamin A derivative known generically as tretinoin, as an acne treatment in 1967 and received a new patent in 1986 after discovering the drug's wrinkle-fighting ability. Owning a patent for something like this can earn you millions, if not billions of dollars. Because all of these rock, oil of Olay, all these different companies that would use your retinol A, patent in order to infuse it into their products, they would need to pay you to use the ingredients in that patent. Guess who's going to be making money off of that? That scientist. Guess who he made it off the backs of? And guess what companies made billions off of the backs of us when it comes to these type of unethical research practices that were done? It says retin A was discovered and made at a Holmesburg prison. They made millions and millions of dollars off the skin of our backs. It says in the 1966 interview with the Philadelphia Inquirer, Kligman described his first visit to Holmesburg with excitement, saying, quote, "All I saw before me were acres of skin," end quote. Hornblum said that there may be some parallels in the case of Henrietta Lacks, a Black woman whose descendants settled a lawsuit last year against a biomedical company that reproduced her cervical cells in 1951 without her permission. The resulting HeLa cells have gone on to become the cornerstone of modern medicine. And yes, I actually spoke about what happened with Henrietta Lacks. And I discussed that story. And now they seek reparations. And I think they won a reparations case for her. But the thing is that, all of the medical breakthroughs that you know of today are attributed to Henrietta Lacks. So the medical breakthroughs from Black men in prison, primarily, and a Black woman are the reason why our medical technology is so good the way it is today, because they did it in unethical ways and unethical fashion. And yet, we don't see a damn dime from that. But we don't have a case. Let's continue. I can't believe this guy said, all I saw before me were acres of skin. That sounds so Hannibal Lecter-ish. Oh my gosh. These people truly were monsters. Says Rice, after serving about 3 years for burglary, later got his GED and built a 30-year career with the city recreation department, rising to a supervisory position. But he also did 3 stints in psychiatric hospitals, watched his marriage disintegrate, and lost touch with his children for a time. As he nears his 80th birthday, he still takes lithium and can't sleep without medication. He said he would accept reparations, but that they wouldn't change much for him. Quote, "No amount of money can replace what was done to me, what was done to my children and wife. This thing was generational. There's nothing that can be done to make it right. I'm going to be like this for the rest of my life." When we experience trauma and we don't recover ourselves from it, we can mirror that trauma or the results of that trauma onto other people. This also includes your kids, your spouse, your siblings, your parents. This can include people in the workplace. It reflect on people who you just meet out on the street. But here's the thing, that trauma gets passed down. And how many men, particularly in our prison system, during that time were experimented on. And when they got out, they didn't speak of it. They didn't say anything about it. They just dealt with it. Because what are we men told we got to do, right? We got to hold it in. We got to deal with it. We can't, express our emotions, right? So that exacerbates the issue. So therefore, then we just end up holding it in to the point where we lash out. And then guess what happens to our families? Because you compounded the problem and made it into this. Because it is not an individual issue, it is a systemic issue. And the systemic issue is by design. And it works perfectly as designed because that's what it's intended to do. We were never meant to thrive in this country because the system is built that way. Should we be asking for reparations for this? Absolutely. But we also should be working to dismantle this system that caused the destruction in the first place. And we should rebuild the system anew so that something like this can never, ever happen again. And so, I hope that inmates can get reparations for this. I hope that we as Black Americans can get reparations, not just for slavery, but for Jim Crow, for redlining. I hope we get reparations for the crosses that were burned in our yards. I hope we get reparations from the companies like Wells Fargo and Aetna for ensuring us as slaves like we were cars, so that if in case the slave owner, the enslavers lost their slaves, they got money for losing us. I hope we get reparations for it all. But it also means dismantling this system, even if we got to do it brick by brick. Because ultimately, this is what it comes down to. And as somebody that is disabled, somebody that is frequently in hospitals and clinics, to know that these men, most of them probably able-bodied and healthy, are experimented on and made to be disabled because of these experiments, that's horrible. That's horrific. And you have to divorce yourself from your humanity in order to not see the humanity within them and then want to do these experiments. You have to rationalize in your mind that they're not human. You have to rationalize in your mind that I'm not a human being. This is the same type of rationalization that Zionists do in Israel to the Palestinians. This is the same rationalization that police will do to people that look like me out in the streets because they're supposed to be the ones that go home every night, even though I'm the one that's in danger. This is the same rationalization that some people will do to immigrants. This is the rationalization that some men will do to women because they're not like us, so therefore they're weaker, or they're not, they don't have the same brain as us, or whatever. How do we see people that are not like us? This is the point. Do not allow this system to talk you out of your humanity when you're looking at people who are different than you. Ultimately, that's what this is about. And yes, it's systemic. But we also have to start with ourselves and how we see other people. Kindness, compassion, and justice, and being loving to your fellow human being. And inculcating that into your other fellow human beings. And if you see another human being being contrary to that, you check them. But no more than just checking other human beings who are not being kind, not being compassionate, and not seeing themselves and others, we need to check and dismantle the system at the same time. Because if we don't see ourselves in other people, then there's no line. And then our world becomes smaller and smaller and smaller till we're just one person. And human beings, by our very nature, cannot survive alone. Meaning, we are setting ourselves to permanent destruction. We will extinct ourselves on the basis of individuality. So see yourself in other people, because we're all one. And that's what it means. Go ahead and like the video. Thank you very much for staying with me for this segment. Appreciate it. I hope you guys got something out of that. But yes, let's hope they get reparations in Philly. All right, so let's go into the chat. I'm going to check to see if we have any Rumble rants and tips on Rockfin first. Let me see. Yep. All right. We do have a Rumble rant, so we're going to go here first. Share the screen. All right, so thank you to Eric NYC for the $5 Rumble rant on Rumble. Thank you so very much. And I'll get to the rest of the Rumble chat in the general chat because I have access to that. But thank you. Thank you so very much. And let's go into Rockfin. Did I roll my R's? Yes, I did. Gotta roll your R's and roll with the punches, baby. All right. All right. So thank you for the comments on Rockman. Roger Meadows. He said you spoke about the racist origins of ice cream, but do you know the racist origins of the ice cream jingle? Here it is, but don't play it because it has the N word in it and you don't want to get in trouble with the rest of RBN. Instead, place it in YouTube. I did not know there was a jingle. Oh my gosh. Oh my Lord. What? Oh my days, Roger. But yeah, the origins of ice cream is racist. All right, so let's continue. Let's continue. They experiment on inmates and carry out the same experiments on our soldiers. Another reason not to enlist. I agree. Exactly. That's analogous to when people call for student loan forgiveness, but if you do not call for a return to free attendance of public universities and college, we will be right back here again. Remember, those whoopings that we learned from enslavement came about as protection, meaning it's better that you get the whooping from me than from them because they will kill you. That's understandable, Roger. I understand that. He says, your boy got a bit of a mouth. You going to let him talk to a white man like that? You got a mouth on you, boy. I'm an officer of the law. You need to be taught respect for the law. Yeah, unfortunately, that piece is also another variable. It was really as a protection from the authorities so that we come home alive. But you know what? I'm at a point right now where it's like, Depending on how far you go back, I am my ancestors. Nat Turner type ancestors. You know, I think it's time for us to go back to our roots in that way. So, but yeah, it was more or less about survival. That's also very true, Roger. Thank you very much. Let's go into here. We do have a super chat from JW Amazon PJ says, "Hi fam, love y'all so much. Keep up the great work." Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that super chat. Let's get into the rest of the chat as well. Let me see. Minimum says they made discoveries over the bodies of people, and the rich put sun blockers too. Yeah. Oop. Let me continue here. Violence said Henrietta Lacks family was never compensated, as far as I know. Immortal cells. Yeah, I did a story about how they ruled that they will be getting reparations. Actually, let me see if I can did I do that on RBN or did I do it on my channel? Let me check. Hang on, because I did a story about it, and I can link that in here. I know I did a story. Let me see. I cannot believe I'm looking for my own video and it's like nowhere near the top. That is crazy. And I even put my channel name in. That's wild, man. Or was it on RBN? I tagged it though. Man, I can't believe where's my video at? I'm trying to remember if I did it on RBN because the it's kind of blurred. I think I may have did it on RBN. Hang on. I either did it on RBN or I did it on my channel. But either way, the point is that there was a story about her being her family getting reparations for it, for the stolen cells. I'm not sure if it'll ever be enough because that's, I would say, arguably hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue that was made off of her cells that was used all over the world. But yeah, so I'll eventually find it, but I know I had it in here somewhere. But thank you very much. Michelia says there's no justice in the American judicial system. Well, yeah. This is why it has to be rebuilt so that we actually do have justice. Violence says women were the first to get othered. It's also very true. It's quite sad that we don't see ourselves in others just because they're a different version of a human being. But That's the way it is in this system. It says threads out of David Michael 9. Them sell Washington. Says in their alphabet code, P represents covert, capture, control, walk down, betrayal. Is R. What? What's this? I don't know what that is, but okay. M. Flannery says, why is it called reparations and a settlement? Or you mean and not a settlement? Because I mean, really, it's about a repair to what was originally done to try to get people back to the original spot that they were. And if you think about it, from the trauma that was caused to people like the gentleman in the article, you think about how that could have also prevented him from doing better financially as far as his job. He could have gotten higher in his position. He could have went to school, but a lot of what was caused to him, could have also prevented him from being able to pursue either higher education or a higher position because of the issues that were wrought onto him by the trauma and the experiments that were done. So, of course, there's that repair, which is the root word in reparations. So, it's just, it's sad, but yeah. All right, so let's get into the next segment as well. We're going to get into that. And before we do that, we're just going to give a quick request that you like the stream and help us out if you actually do like the stream, by the way, because some people, they feel differently, and that's okay. But thank you very much for that. Now, let's get into the next segment that I would like to get into. Let's talk about the poor people, shall we? Forgetting the poor. The middle class. The middle class. The middle class. The middle class. We hear this so many times, especially during the election season, that you would think that that's the most important class among people. They say that's the largest, even though you and I both know that it is constantly shrinking. But it seems to be that there is a class that is constantly forgotten. Some call it the poor, some call it the working class, or sometimes the working poor. But essentially, it is the people who are at or below or slightly above the poverty line. And when it comes to those of us that are within that economic category, a lot of times people go, well, your situation would get a lot better if you just voted. So then you have people like Donald Trump and Kamala Harris that people say, well, they'll be better for the rest of us, either or. When in reality, if you notice in their rhetoric and in their policies, they won't do a damn thing for us. I think it was scripture that said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So therefore, what is really actually abundant in your heart is what you'll keep talking about. If you're talking about the middle class all the time, then guess what? You're going to be talking about those people more, which means everybody else you're going to forget. It constantly happens to us. Let's get into it, because I would like to get into this article. But first,
Every system.
I want to go back to this video that I cold open with, because I think that's important. So here's Dr. Joy DeGruy again. We're going to talk about systems, because that's the overarching theme of this stream.
Every system is perfectly designed to get the results it achieves. That's what we have to appreciate. These systems, if people say, well, how do we fix them? They're not broken. They're designed to produce exactly what you see. There's no fixing them. There really isn't, because they're perfectly designed. We need new systems, right? These systems, as they're set up, are designed to do exactly what they're supposed to do. Women have a certain position. People of color have a certain position. White people have a certain position. When you look at law enforcement, I can't tell you how many people have said to me, how do we fix it, Joy? How do we fix it? I said, you can't fix it. You know that policing, for example, in America, it came from slave patrols. The function, right? So the actual where it was derived was terrorism. They were terrorizing enslaved people that had been freed for fear that there was going to be a revolt. It never happened. You realize that they still punish us over this notion of fear of what we're going to do.
Yeah. And the thing is like a lot of times we talk about, tweaking or improving the system, or what a lot of people like to call reform. You can't reform feces, baby. You can't reform it. No, it's trash. You got to toss it out. You got to put in something new. There's no fixing it, because it's designed to do what it does. For instance, what is a gun designed to do? You can try to use it in any other way that is not designed for, but in the end, it's designed to do one thing. And it does perfectly what it's designed to do. So the same goes with this system. So the same goes with the electoral system. So the same goes with the carceral system. So it's the same goes with the financial system. So the same goes with the system regarding pharmaceuticals. So the system goes the same thing with agriculture. So the same goes within the capitalist system. I also really appreciate how well Dr. DeGruy cooks here.
Because and that's their pathology. I mean, that really is their pathology. But if it actually came from slave patrols, what makes you think it's there to protect you? It's not designed to protect you. It may occasionally, but that's not what it's designed to do.
And you can also say the same thing for our electoral system in many ways. Because who was it originally for? Who did it benefit the most originally? It wasn't women. It wasn't poor whites. And damn sure it wasn't people that look like me. And it damn sure wasn't black women. It was wealthy, landowning white men. That's who it benefited. Has that really changed? Let's get into this because I want to get into this article because I think this is important. Because we're going to talk about systems and what it does, right? So let me share this. So it says, in battleground Georgia, poor people see no reason to vote. That decision could sway election. So let's get into this. All right. Says Sabrina Friday scanned her room at her mother's nest, an organization in Macon that provides baby supplies, training, food, and housing to mothers in need, and asked how many people plan to vote. Of the 30, mostly women, 6 raised their hands. Friday, the group's executive director, said she tries to stress civic duty, an often difficult proposition given the circumstances of her clients. Friday says, when a mom is in a hotel room and there are 6 or 7 people in 2 beds and her kids are hungry and she just lost a car, she doesn't want to hear too much about elections. She wants to hear how you can help. Yes. Because here's the thing. You can talk about these elections. You can talk about what people plan to do down the line. But the thing is like the need for the help is immediate. That's the issue. And if you're not talking about helping people immediately, then what are you here for? Why are we listening to you? And then on top of it, you don't even talk about my class. You talk about the middle class. You only talk about them. You don't talk about me. You don't talk about what I'm going through. You don't talk about how I'm working 60 hours a week or 50 hours a week. But then because of budget cuts, because, the shareholders got to get theirs, then they cut my hours. My hours get cut in half. Now I'm working 25, 30 hours a week, but it's not enough for me to afford my rent. So therefore, what do I have to do? Well, the car that I have, because our public transportation is crap, I actually have to stop paying on the car. And once I stop paying on the car, those car payments that I got from a payday lender, I now have to start parking my car at some other random parking lot, and I have to back it in so that they can't see my license plate. And then once that happens, then guess what? I have to make sure that they don't find my car so that they somehow in the middle of the night, a tow truck doesn't come and repo it so that I can get to work, even though they cut my hours. So now if my car gets repoed without me knowing, how do I get my kids to school? How do I go to my doctor's appointments? How do I go grocery shopping? How do I get more hours? Nobody else is hiring. Even though they're saying unemployment is low, guess what? Nobody else is hiring. And then I started getting late on the electric. And then the electric starts piling on. Right? Kid gets sick. You got to send them to school, even though you're not really supposed to. And then your kid gets sick, and then they get other kids sick, and then it goes around. You may get sick, but you still have to go to work. You work in food service, you're sick, and you have a communicable disease, and that may get on other people's food. Oh, baby. See, here's the thing. When you're poor, everything is more expensive. Trust me, I know. Let's continue. Macon is the largest city in Bibb County, where the majority of residents are Black and 1 in 4 of his population lives in poverty. When Joe Biden became president 4 years ago, he promised to tackle the pernicious gap of racial inequality. And in few places is the stubbornness of that challenge as politically significant in the state that it could swing the presidential election. So it's about 80 miles south of Atlanta. Bibb County is the kind of place where Vice President Kamala Harris would need to run up her margin in order to defeat Donald Trump in this year's election, a strategy that helped Biden win the state 4 years ago as he promised to lift up Black Americans. It won't be easy. Bibb County never recovered all the jobs lost during the pandemic, and Labor Department data shows it has more jobs. It had more jobs in 2019 under Trump than it does now. So this also really explains why you also have an influx of Black people now that are going with the Trump campaign, because they're saying, I actually did better under Trump than I'm doing under Biden. So therefore, how would Harris help me? And Harris can say whatever she wants, but the thing is like, you're literally part of the administration, the current administration, where people are catching hell. So they're not believing you because you didn't do what you said that you're trying to do. And you can talk about the GDP, you can talk about the jobless rate numbers all you want, but it still does not translate. The math ain't mathing, because when I look at my bank account, the math ain't mathing. When I look at my wallet is laughing at me. Why? Because for us, the material reality does not reflect the abstract reality that you're trying to sell us. And this is the issue. This is why so many people are actually running away from Kamala Harris, because it's the economy, stupid. Black people have been saying this for forever. You do not want to give us tangibles in order to lift ourselves up so that we can actually have a better standing. If people aren't doing good materially, they will not vote for you. That's the issue. And you keep running on abortion. And I'm not saying that's not important. It is important. But the thing is like, what good is it if people can't afford the things they need to in order to live? If you can't afford the food, the housing, the education, you know what I'm saying? The transportation, you can't afford these things. You can't afford your utilities, which electricity and internet are absolutely essential. I'm sorry, but you can talk about all these other social issues all you want, but people are not going to stick with you. That's the way it is. And even more so with people who are poor or working poor, because we already know that you're not going to fight for us, and you expect us to actually stand with you. And then liberals are going to come in and go, well, you guys need to vote for her to prevent Donald Trump. Guess what? We're catching hell under either party. It don't matter, because they weren't speaking to us anyway. They were speaking to you, Mr. and Mrs. Six Figures. That's who they're speaking to. They're not speaking to me. They're not speaking to a thousandaire. Let's continue. It says Trump, the former president, sees himself as having an opportunity with Black voters, particularly men. But he and Harris have one thing in common. Each will have a difficult time persuading people to turn out who typically sit out elections. More than 47,000 people in Bibb County were eligible to vote in 2020 and didn't. A figure roughly 4 times the Biden's margin of victory across the entire state. Eligible voters are defined as legal residents who are 18 or older, according to census figures. The Biden-Harris administration can claim to have addressed 3 of the 4 crises it pledged to fix. The pandemic largely receded 3 years ago. The economy has improved, and there's a genuine commitment to several hundreds of billions of dollars to tackle climate change. But racial inequality, as measured by the Federal Reserve, has worsened. I'm going to repeat. Racial inequality has worsened. If you vote for me, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. They voted for you, and look what happened. And trust and believe, this is not an endorsement. This is not any praise, and this is not any type of pushing people in the direction of Donald Trump. Because look, we were still catching hell under Donald Trump. But you're literally pushing them into a direction where they would choose the lesser evil, and people are literally lesser eviling Donald Trump. You've gotten so bad that they will turn to Trump. You've done such a terrible job that they're turning to another fascist for survival. You have failed. That's how bad Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are, that they're literally turning to Trump. You lost the plot. Or really, you never really had it in the first place. But people are going, why are they turning to Trump? Because you've done that terribly. And now, you're berating us. You're berating people who may be working or working poor for going with somebody who is slightly less harmful because they dare to look at their pocketbooks. Instead of critiquing the person who's trying to win them over and say, you guys need to do something better. And rest assured, it is not just a genocide that people are voting on. It is also other different factors as well. It is economic instability. This is why people are also going another direction. Let's continue. Miss Linda Solomon said that she and her daughter aren't voting because nothing changes, no matter who sits in the White House. She says, why are you going to vote and ain't nobody doing nothing? Says, while Harris has excited Black voters in and around Atlanta with its wealthier and better educated electorate, interviews in Bibb County suggest voters living in far worse circumstances are not moved by the historic nature of her candidacy. Democrats won the county by a 22-1 margin in 2020, and Republicans are increasingly confident that they can erode Democrats' historic advantage of winning roughly 90% of all Black votes. Jediah Thomas, Black media director for the Trump campaign, said in an email exchange that Black voters in rural America hold the keys to America's future, and President Trump is the only candidate who has proven he can deliver real results. Thomas said that Blacks' unemployment hit historic lows during Trump's first term, although it ultimately hit a record low of 4.8% in April of 2023 under Biden. But the Black unemployment rate is now at 5.6%, more than 2 percentage points higher than the unemployment rate for white workers and higher than the rate for Asian and Hispanic workers. So, this is talking about the more well-to-do people in Atlanta and how they're very excited about people like Harris. And of course, they go to HBCUs and they're hosting watch parties and things like that. This isn't happening in poor neighborhoods, right? And you know, it's kind of funny because I want to mention this too. Poor people are not focused on the election. We don't focus on the election. To us, it doesn't matter. So you can talk about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris all you want. We're too busy trying to work these hours to make sure rent's paid. We're too busy to make sure that our light bill is still paid. We're trying to make sure our cell phone plans don't get canceled, because we need to be able to communicate. Some of us got kids in school. Some of us got elderly parents that we got to, keep an eye on. They're not focused on it. They don't have the time. They don't have the mental bandwidth to focus on who's running and what they're doing and what they're saying. It's quite unfortunate, because that's the way the system is intended to work. The system's not broken. This is exactly how it's designed. Let's continue. So they're talking to different HBCU students. One of the things that I wanted to bring up was this. This says, but even on a storied historically Black college campus, there was an awareness that the messages that are invigorating college students might not hit others. Elise Sampson, 20 years old, a junior political science major at Spelman, and a member of the sorority co-sponsoring the registration drive, said economic disparities needed to be part of the discussions. Quote, it comes down to an accessibility issue. When people don't feel heard and represented, it is hard to want to participate in a political system that does not hear and represent you, end quote. Says poor voters are the hidden figures in the election. Even with 2020's record number of ballots cast, more than 75 million people eligible to vote did not cast ballots, according to a study by the Center for Inclusive Democracy at the University of Southern California. AP VoteCast, a survey of both voters and non-voters, showed that non-voters in 2020 tended to be poorer, younger, less educated, unmarried, and minorities. The data collected by AP and ORC, Center for Public Affairs Research, also found that among voters in 2020, 15% reported having household income under $25,000 in the previous year, compared with roughly 3 in 10 non-voters. Put those characteristics against a population of 27 million adults who live below the poverty line. According to the census, and figures suggest that people on the lower rungs of the economic ladder probably make up a significant subset of non-voters. 27 million adults. 27 million adults with families. 27 million adults with families that realize that their voice doesn't matter, because if it did, the economic system would reflect that. And so this is why people like Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are having issues, especially with low-income voters or potential voters, because they don't see a point in it. These are the disaffected voters that people do not reach out to. Look, I'm going to tell you this right now. Go to any hood in the United States and ask them if anybody knocked on their door to try to get out the vote. Go to a hood. Go to Baltimore, go to Chicago, especially on the South Side, go to East LA, right? Go to Camden, New Jersey, right? Go to Harlem, go to Brooklyn, right? Go to places like in Milwaukee. Go to St. Louis. Go to these places. Go to the hoods and ask the people there, have you guys seen anybody canvassing in your neighborhood for just name the office? Why don't they go there? Those are potential voters. Primarily because the Democratic Party and the Republican parties don't care about them. Because then if they start to vote for them, that means that they're going to start wanting to what? Demand a return on investment. Or ROV, return on voting. I voted for you because you said that you were going to increase the minimum wage and you didn't. So therefore, let's go here. Because I want to share this as well, because I think this is really important, especially when it comes to economics. So this is from EconoFact. Make sure this is big enough. It says voting and income. Voter turnout by family income. So you see this chart. So from $5,000 to $150,000. And this is percent voted in 2016 election. So as you see, it has a commensurate rate with the more you make, the more likely you are to vote. It says the issue, voter turnout in the United States is vastly unequal. Richer people are more likely to vote than poorer people. If the poor people are less likely to vote, then they have a lower probability of having their interests and preferences reflected in public policy. While the association between higher family incomes and greater voter turnout is well documented, the research for each relationship is not fully understood. Understanding what drives the relationship between higher incomes and voting could help address this form of political inequality and more generally provide insight into how these to increase political participation in the democratic process. So says understanding what drives the relationship between higher incomes and voting could help address this form of political inequality. Says the facts. The percentage of people who vote in the United States is low by international standards. The United States ranks 26th of the 32 countries that constitute the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, in voter turnout. Roughly about 60% of eligible people in the United States during recent presidential elections. Participation tends to be lower during midterm congressional elections, with only about 40% of eligible voters participating, just like in 2022. Though the 2018 midterm elections broke from this trend, and with 50% of eligible voters participating, it says voter participation increases with family income. So during 2016 presidential election, for instance, there was a clear positive association between family income and participation in voting. The 48% of voting participation rate for families in the lowest income category in 2016 was a bit more than half of the 86% rate for families in the highest income category. The ratio of differences across income groups is quantitatively similar in other election years as well. It says the fact that higher income is associated with greater voter turnout does not necessarily mean that having higher income causes people to be more likely to vote. So this is also the interesting part. It says, in theory, there are reasons why higher incomes can make people more likely to vote. Voting can be a costly activity. Doing so requires time, skills, information, a certain level of health, and access to transportation, among others. It is possible to have a higher incomes provides people with resources that make the activity of voting easier. But there are other possible interpretations regarding how low income might affect voting that point to in a different direction. If voting requires taking time off, this can be more costly for people who earn more, as the opportunity cost of their time is higher. Now, here's the thing. Do we have voting as a federal holiday? How many people have the benefit of being able to take time off to vote? Whether it's municipal, state, or federal elections. I've never had a job where we actually got election day off. Have you? On top of it, where's your polling place? Is it nearby? Do you have to drive? Do you have to take a bus? Do you have to take an Uber? Can you get there? If you're disabled, do you have access to be able to get to your polling place? Do you have enough money to be able to get to your polling place if you're on a fixed income like SSDI? If you're elderly, do you have enough money if you're on a fixed income, if you're getting Social Security retirement? What about those of you that have kids? Do you have somebody to watch your kids when you go vote? Do you have enough money to even get on the bus? See, there's a whole lot of variables. There's a lot of variables when it comes to these things that a lot of people just do not regard. And then on top of it, I spent about 2-3 hours researching the ballot to know what and who to vote for. Does anybody else have that luxury to be able to spend a few hours to research? And it's not just the president and the vice president. It's also senators, House seats. It's also the ballot initiatives, right? Especially if you live in a ballot initiative state. Sometimes it may also be amendments for your city or your county, and then you have to research those. You also have to research the judges, which I'll be talking about on Tuesday on my channel. The judges. You want to know who you're going to be voting for as far as either Supreme Court for retention for those judges or circuit courts retention for those judges. You may not know. And so, do you actually have time? Do you have the bandwidth for that? Some of us have kids. Some of us may not have kids. Some of us may have parents or siblings that we're taking care of, and we don't have time for that. So when it comes to people who are on the lower rungs of the economic ladder, that's what makes it difficult. It says, alternatively, it is possible that other factors that tend to be associated with higher incomes, such as higher levels of education, for instance, underlie the association between higher incomes and voter turnout. Education provides skills that make it easier for people to consume political information. Beyond resources and skills, education might also provide people with social context that makes it more likely to participate in voting. If those with higher levels of education feel a greater sense of civic duty or have a stronger belief in the benefits of voting, this could contribute to the correlation between income and voting. let me ask you this. How many of y'all have read a ballot initiative amendment on a ballot sheet and you were confused as to what the hell they were saying? I was texting some friends, some comrades, and go, what does this mean? Because even I was like, I don't understand this at all. So when you have an inadequate education system that's basically predicated on property taxes that really, are variable based on the zip code that you live in. So the richer the area, the better education you have. The poorer area that you live in, the less resource education that you have. So therefore, you get an inadequate education, which means that when it comes to actually voting, then you look at those questions, you want to just walk out of the polling place. You don't even want to vote because you don't even understand a damn thing. Or you understand, or it's very hard or difficult to understand because you basically need a lawyer standing next to you in order to help you understand the ballot questions that are on your ballot. Also, by the way, a majority of Americans have a 6th grade reading level, meaning that most of us cannot read above a 6th grade level. Why? Because systems are designed perfectly to achieve what they are doing. The systems are designed to perfectly keep us at a certain level. They want to keep us at a certain level so that we don't go too far above, so that we don't start getting uppity. Because the more you know, the more power you have. When you know better, you do better. And they don't want you to do better. All right. Says, would increasing household income lead to increased voter participation? One way to try to isolate the effect of higher income on voter participation is to examine what happens to voter turnout after an external change in household income. In recent work, my colleagues and I examined the effect of unexpected and permanent choice increase in household incomes of the eastern band of the Cherokee Indians in North Carolina on voter participation. As a result of a casino opening up in Eastern Cherokee Reservation, these households enjoyed a windfall increase of income that was unrelated to education, disabilities, income level, marital status, or the presence of children. All adults enrolled tribal members were eligible to receive cash transfers from casinos revenues that averaged $4,700 a year in the year $2000. We find that the increase in income did have an effect. We find that the increase in income did not have an effect on parents' voting behavior, as there was no change in their pattern of voting after the casino opened. However, there was a marked increase in the voting behavior of children from the initially poorest families once they are eligible to vote, as compared to groups of other children that were otherwise similar but did not receive that windfall. The children benefiting from cash transfers had higher levels of education as adults than similar children who did not, which suggests that the subsequent increase in voting may be due to the higher income being devoted to more education for the children. Another possible source of this result is that families that receive extra income were less likely to move, and therefore these families may have enjoyed a greater sense of engagement in their communities, boosting their civic participation. So, it says, what does this mean? Democracy is predicated on open elections and individual voter participation, but the percentage of people who vote for the United States is low by international standards. Furthermore, voting rates are unevenly distributed across socioeconomic groups, with much lower voting rates among the poor. We find that the cash transfer program that increases household incomes has a positive effect on the voting behaviors of children from the poorest households. This suggests that income augmentation programs that help children may have other indirect and long-term benefits to society in forms of increased social participation and civic engagement as adults. There may be more reasons to champion existing programs and policies aimed at reducing child poverty. Not only will they reduce current disparities, they may play a role in ensuring the future electorate will be more representative as well. So, with that being said, meaning, y'all know where I'm going with this. How do we help our neighbors in improving their quality of life? See, the thing is that ultimately, they go hand in hand. You improve somebody's quality of life, guess what? They're going to be more inclined to participate electorally. But the thing is, you have to improve people's quality of life. Well, in a system designed to keep us at the level that we're at so that we do not achieve anything better, to keep us on this lower rung so that only the most rich and well-connected are able to determine our election outcomes. Well, guess what? How do we improve our situation in life so that we're more inclined to vote? Well, since we're designed to be down and depressed in this way, that means that we're going to have to skip the process of, we're going to have to go over their heads, so to speak. What does this mean? This means improving people's quality of life outside the realm of electoral politics, meaning that just you voting is not going to help people's quality of life. You have to do mutual aid and building dual power. Now, I'm not saying not to vote, because guess what? That is a very small piece in a very big puzzle. What I'm saying is, am I going to take out that first Tuesday in November to bubble in a few names and vote for some ballot initiatives? Yeah, I'm going to do that. But that's not the end all be all. That's not even, look, that's not even the main course. That's not even the appetizer. That's barely a charcuterie board. What needs to happen is the organization that's done on the ground that actually helps people to uplift them so that they in turn can change the system in order to actually have an electoral system that works for everybody. How do we help improve their lives now when we know the politicians either drag their feet in helping them or give them crumbs as help or don't help them at all? This is why we encourage to push to do mutual aid in building dual power. Voting rates among lower incomes is a systemic issue, and it is designed that way. Do mutual aid and build dual powers so that it can help change the system so that more people can participate in a democracy. Ultimately, this is what you do. Now, go against the duopoly? Hell yeah. Don't vote for Democrats and Republicans, right? But if you are going to go, vote against the duopoly. But more importantly, do action and organizing on the ground. That is the most important thing you can do. And then after you do the organizing on that Tuesday, then go bubble the few names in that are outside the duopoly so that you can mitigate disaster for the rest of us. But your organizing work has to be first and foremost. Now, with that being said, I want to show you guys what we can do. I want to give an example because I just don't want to say organize and then I don't give you guys an example, right? there's this gentleman that I really would love to have on. And I'm gonna see if I can have him on. Oh. He comes in hot. All right. Let me show you guys this. Because I want us to imitate our revolutionary ancestors of the past and do what they did. So let me share this with you guys. Let's go.
The Black Panther Party had over 65 survival programs. Yeah, you might have heard of their free breakfast program, but what about these others? How about the People's Free Ambulance Service? This was first started by the Winston-Salem, North Carolina chapter, and it was all started because this 15-year-old black boy got shot. He really didn't die because he got shot. He really died because the county ambulance refused to move his body. Panther said, we already know what this is. They didn't wait for the government to figure things out. They trained as EMTs. Then they converted an old hearse into an ambulance, and they got the job done. What you know about seniors against a fearful?
So, first of all, first ambulance. Mutual aid. Building dual power. Here's the question. Was that what made the Black Panther Party so dangerous? Yes. Because they subverted your need for the capitalist system. They circumvented the need for capitalism. And if you're improving people's material conditions, then the likelihood of civic engagement actually goes up, up, up. If you're building a new system, then they look at the old system and go, I don't need that anymore. We have something better. Are you listening? Hear the words of the ancestors, baby. Let's continue.
What you know about seniors against a fearful environment? Safe. On the first of the month, Panthers walked with seniors to cash their checks so they wouldn't get robbed. Prior to the Panthers, the seniors had gone to the Oakland Police Department. Instead of protecting them, they told them just walk closer to the curb. Man, we all we got. There was even a...
So, helping the elderly. Helping the elderly to be able to get to cash their checks, because we all know that the elderly are on a fixed income, and keep them safe. Also known as public safety. Because, like we know, the police do not have a constitutional duty to protect you. So who takes on that duty? We do. We save us. We keep each other safe. Right? That's what we do. That's mutual aid. That's building dual power. That's circumventing the capitalist system. That's what we do. We affect people's material conditions on a fundamental level. Period. Point blank, period. Just like what the Black Panther Party did. I love this next one. Let's get into this one. This dude is fire, by the way. I gotta have him on the show.
There was even a free plumbing and maintenance program. I mean, how many of our homes fall into disrepair because of lack of funds? According to the American Housing Survey, blacks are twice as likely as whites to live in inadequate homes. I'm talking about in 2021. Well, the Panthers provided maintenance service for free to the community. They also had a free...
So, hang on.
Pest control program. I lived in Houston. Y'all got bugs. But let's be real. Living with roaches and rats is a public health crisis. There is no reason that in the wealthiest nation in the world, people should live under these conditions. And that's what I'm trying to get at. When you realize...
So, free plumbing service? Do you know how expensive plumbing is? And look, here's the thing. You can go, well, I don't know plumbing, right? I don't know how to do plumbing. Baby, you're watching me on YouTube right now. After this, you can go in just plumbing tutorials and then get together with your homeboys or your homegirls or your homies and go, hey, we can learn how to do some tutorials ourselves. Raise a few funds, right? Get a GoFundMe or a Give Send Go or whatever, and raise money to buy supplies, to go to a Lowe's or go to a Home Depot, or go to an Ace Hardware, because Ace Hardware is actually a co-op. Go to an Ace Hardware and then buy all your supplies, and then start doing free plumbing services and pest control services. Look, research how to do all natural, non-invasive pest control that will actually help without, and it'll be all natural without affecting pets and people in a natural way, without using harsh chemicals. You can probably learn to do that and start helping people with that. So then you can literally start helping people in your area. See, this is why we talk about mutual aid, in order to help people to build dual power. Because guess what? They're not calling it Massey Services. They're not calling an ortho. They're not calling a Terminex for them to charge people, up to wazoo for pest services in their house. They're not calling all these super high, ultra expensive plumbing services for people who may own their homes, but they are living in substandard conditions. They're helping out people, and they're circumventing the system. Here's the point. Take it away, homeboy.
Should live under these conditions. And that's what I'm trying to get at. When you realize that capitalism needs you to be poor, you ain't poor because there's no resources, no talent, or people. Nah, the economic system we live under has to be flipped on its head for these conditions to end. No amount of charity will end poverty. And that's what the survival program showed everybody. By relying.
He said, no amount of charity will end poverty. Boom. No amount of charity. This is why you need mutual aid and direct action and building dual power, because charity ain't going to cut it. You can give and give and give away you want, but guess what? If you keep it within the system, it is going to stay put, and it's going to keep people poor, because that's what the system is designed to do. Remember what Dr. Joy DeGruy said, that the system is perfectly designed to do what it needs to accomplish, which is keeping you poor and keeping a small subset of people very rich so that they have all the resources. This is why you have to walk away from the system in order to achieve something better. And this is what we call walking away from the system, by doing something different outside of capitalism. Basically using capitalism to hang itself. Oh, this was glorious. Gotta get this guy on my show.
By relying on ourselves, by refusing to feed this economic system. Only then can we prepare for a real revolution. The survival programs were much needed services, but they were also opportunities to provide political education. They were organizing tools. Imagine a political candidate whose whole platform is about ending poverty. For real. Let's not be hungry again. Let's not be unhealthy again. Let's not live in squalor again. Let's not be unhoused again. But you ain't got to believe me. Read the Black Panther Party's Service to the People programs by David Hilliard and the Dr. Huey P. Newton Foundation.
And the most important piece is education. Why are we doing this? Because we realize that capitalism is a system that requires infinite growth on a planet with finite resources, and is not conducive for humans to survive or even thrive. Not from a collective standpoint. This is why I talk about on my channel, I read books. I read books to you because I'm teaching myself and also trying to help my audience learn along with me. This is why I applaud channels like Midwestern Marks. Look, you can have your disagreements with them, but they're trying to teach on the ground so that you know exactly, you can apply the theory in actual practice. You need to do both. You can't just sit there and read theory all day and then you tell people, oh, you need to read theory. And you can't just do the practice all day because you'll be like somebody that does some of the right things, but you're still feeling yourself around in order to see how we should get it done. You're not actually researching and getting the dialectical materialism from different systems like the Chinese Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Bolivarian Revolution. You're not getting those actual type of lessons to see what they did successfully, so that you know, okay, so this is where they fell. This is how we can do better. And even the Black Panther Party, they even had their faults. For instance, the Black Panther Party, had some misogyny in there. People like Asada Shakur spoke about it. Are you actually listening to the women and femmes within your circle and listening to the marginalized people within your circle in order to move forward? Because liberation has to be part of your politic. So this is the issue, right? This is what we have to do. And we have to make sure to listen to the concerns and the realities of the people who are the most marginalized among us. That means sometimes some of us got to sit down and shut up. I know I do. Because some of us have more privileges in this system than others. Some of you may not like to hear that, but that's the truth. I'm going to give it to you straight. Some of you need to shut the fuck up and listen. And I'm not talking about listening to respond. I'm talking about listening to understand. So when we talk about organizing, this is what we mean. These were some of the examples. This is some of the stuff that I want to implement in the Orlando chapter. I know Savvy is doing some teaching work, especially in her chapter. We want to collaborate with different groups here in Orlando. I know there's People's Free Kitchen that I want to collaborate with. Real Orlando's doing great work that I want to collaborate with. If anybody from Real Orlando's watching, shout out to you guys. You guys are doing the damn thing, and I'm very proud of all of y'all. So this is what we want to do. And the thing is, like, when we talk about people's, their inability to vote, or they're less likely to vote, is because of the system, the way it's designed, because the system doesn't want people like them to vote, because it does not want them to have any type of hold on power. So to try to mitigate disaster, yeah, I'll bubble in those few names in the first Tuesday of November. But ultimately, the main goal is to do direct action. And also use the political campaigns that you may support that are outside the duopoly, that have great policies, and say, hey, look, you see these policies this person has? We can actually do that ourselves too. We can build that. And even then, some of these political parties that are outside the duopoly, they're trying to do, outside work too. So you can band together when you're not in an election, so that you can build dual power together. And then if they want to try to push the system a little bit more, then if they want to run, then yeah, they can go ahead and run, whether you vote for them or not, whether you decide to engage in an electoral system or not. But your ultimate goal is to build dual power and build community. Because this system should not, it cannot continue. So let me give you guys the link to that TikTok video, because homie was cooking. He was cooking. And yeah, please make sure to just One more point. This is also how you see yourself in your neighbors, even people who you may be different from. Because once you start to build community, you start to see yourself in other people. This is how you start to break away from any bigoted ideas that you may have. This is how you start to decolonize your mind, because you start to see people. You start to see your fellow humans. You start to really see them. This is how you see people who, you may think that you look at them and you may have a whole bunch of disagreement, but you really start to see them as, oh, there's more that unites us than divides us. Is organizing also a social club? Yes. And does it help us to be able to come together better? Yes. That's another point. Even if you're an introvert and you really don't like people, it still helps, right? So do your best and actually bond with your fellow human beings. All right, so thank you very much. Go ahead and like this stream. We're going to get into the chat. I'm going to check to see if we have another Rumble rant. And if we do, good. If not, then we shall get into the rest of the chat. All right, I don't see any Rumble rants, so we're good there. And let's get into Rockman. Do we have any more? Okay. Yep. So let me go into the rock. Get into the rock. All right. Roger says, these experiments is, like you said, is the reason why Black men don't like doctors. And the pilfering of the Freedmen's Savings and Trust Bureau is the reason why we don't like banks. These are the people I grew up on. My issue with them is that they correctly ID'd the problem, yet never offered any solutions, whether or not because they ain't know what the solutions were or too afraid to say. She came after and witnessed the Black liberation era of the 1960s and 70s, who spoke radical socialist communist solutions and saw what happened to them. Thinking don't want no parts of that. Don't read out. They don't want you to get in trouble, but I say they're. Okay, thank you, Roger. Thank you for the tip on Rockman. He says that is right, Jay. There's only way you can motivate poor people to vote is if you're empowering them. You have to understand voting for candidates does not empower you, and in fact is disempowering, because the more you hold on to your vote, the more you have leverage over the politician. The moment you vote for the politician, you are transferring power to a body you chose to trust, and you will no longer have the leverage over that politician. Now, it's a hope and a prayer that they'll do what you want. However, I could get people to vote for a vote empowers them by giving them the ability to articulating them that this is them enacting legislation and ratifying rights to be enshrined into their state constitution. Just read the sentence that's asking you the question, do you like it? Then circle yes. If you dislike it, then circle no. Now, another way it can be empowering. Robust competitive public financing of ballot measures, where you are guaranteed an absolute minimum subsidy from the government of $1,000 weekly. That is before the grassroots donations coupled with the public financing of ballot measures to be partitioner a phone banker, door knocker, etc., which gets multiplied, kicks in. You can job recruit and you can get signatures. That right there is empowering twice. I can employ the projects in the hood with that. Sometimes it may also be that guy sitting over there homeless on your bench. Yo, you want a job? Come through this location on Monday, and we're going to educate and train you and pay you for your time. If you're not feeling it, keep the money and walk away. But there's an initiative or veto referendum that interests you. Now we can take it to the next level. We're also going to get you cleaned up, because we can't have you showing up at people's homes looking homeless, scaring the crap out of them. I'm not sure if you're still writing more, Roger, but absolutely. But, that's the thing. These ideas will go great with the workers and the poor, but it won't go well over the super rich. It won't go well over the affluent, because the affluent will say, well, you're just collecting shit as you're under a real job, when in reality it is, right? Doing a job like that is really just advancing democracy. I think that's a very important job, And so this is why it's us versus the oligarchs. It's us versus the system itself. And so, this is why I say, one of the most important things you can do if you do decide to engage in voting, you vote on the ballot measures, right? At the Community Church of Boston earlier today, Sabby Sabs was giving an economic report. I wanted to touch on it a little bit, but I'm not sure if I'm going to have time. But she was talking about the economic report, about, how, things, are going down basically in our country. Oh, hell, let me go there. Just for like 5 minutes. Hang on. Let me share this with you guys, because Savvy had quite a few good key things to say. And if you guys haven't watched this, I think it's at the 30-minute mark, if I'm correct. Yeah. Hold on. Okay, hang on. All right. Okay.
Broadcasts. Thank you, Sabrina, for joining us this morning. It's a pleasure to have you. So take the choice. Cordless or
probably with the cord. Let's go ahead and get to the next slide. Just want to hit on the agenda here first really quick. We're going to discuss the Massachusetts cost of living for 2024. So we're going to start with our state first. Then we're going to dive.
So let's get into
Did you
this.
know that the recent cost of living report shows that Massachusetts has the second highest housing wage in the United States? Now, this was not the case last year. We have now bumped up ahead of the state of New York. But it's not just about Massachusetts, and we're going to dive into why there are certain reasons why this is happening across the country. But if you live in the Boston area, or if you've lived in the Boston area, I'm pretty sure you know that rent is very expensive. It's just a reality. But if we look a little bit deeper, you'll notice something else. Massachusetts, according to the Out of Reach report for 2024, the minimum wage in this state is $15 an hour. And I point that out because there is a big push for a fight for 15. We already have that here, and it's still expensive to live here. Right now, if you make $15 an hour, you would have to work 98 hours a week to afford a modest one-bedroom rental in Massachusetts.
So basically what she's speaking about is the disparity that exists, which really is by design. Like I said earlier, this is all by design. And then I want to get to the solutions that she brought up, because people say, well, all we have to do is do tweaks within the system, and these solutions have, disadvantages.
Because
and so I want
to get to solutions, I broke this up into two different sections: temporary solutions and long-term solutions. So the two problems I brought to you is we don't have a living wage. We need a living wage in this country, and the private equity firms that are pricing everybody out. And one thing I want to mention about private equity as well, again, they're not just buying apartment buildings, they're buying single family homes as well. This is why a lot of college graduates can't afford to buy a single family home. They are buying those homes, they are renovating them, they jack up the price, and they sell them to other investors. That's why it's hard for you to buy a home. So we have to change the talking point of there's not enough housing. Even if you look at a city like San Francisco, that is not the case. There is vacant housing that is available, but the city is not choosing to house people in the vacant housing. So this idea of we just need to build more homes, that does not solve the problem. There is plenty of housing. There's plenty of vacant housing that is not being used. So these temporary solutions, the first one, move to a cheaper state. That can help you in the short term. One of the pros of that is, again, you'll have a lower cost of living in the short term. But one of the cons is that an influx of transplants will increase the demand. The demand will increase the cost of living. You can look at Florida, you can look at North Carolina, and I myself have lived in those southern states that were more affordable: South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia. And I can tell you that over time you saw the change, because as more people move in, the demand is going to increase. When the demand.
So just to also point to what Savvy said here, because a lot of times people will try to give us like some temporary solutions to the systemic problem. And one of the things that a lot of people would say, well, just move to an area where it's more rural so you can actually it'll be cheaper for you. And it's like, yeah, that works for a point in time. I give you an example here in Orlando, Florida. How many people here in Orlando, Florida, back in the mid 90s to early 2000s, they decided to move out to Point Siena. They decided to move out to St. Cloud because it was empty out there. How is it now? How many people decided to move out to Davenport because it was further away from the city and housing prices were cheaper? What's the housing prices like now? How does Davenport look now? What about places like Mineola or Groveland, right? What about those places out there in Lake County? Like, those places are exploding now because everybody wants to go out there because it's cheaper, which I like to say is just another form of gentrification. You have intrastate gentrification and you have outer state gentrification, meaning a lot of those people who make more in places like Massachusetts, New York, New Hampshire, Michigan, California, they'll come here and then they'll think, oh my God, it's cheap. Next thing you know, the rent prices explode. The property prices explode. The food prices explode. And everything gets way more expensive. And then those of us who are already here, we can't afford it. See what I mean? So the thing is, like, this is temporary fix to a systemic problem.
And increase, the cost of living is going to increase. So that's a short-term solution. There was an article written by the Boston Globe recently where they were advising college graduates to leave Massachusetts and move to Michigan. And I'm sorry, that is not a long-term solution. What again is going to happen to Michigan is that Michigan again will start to become unaffordable. So we have to look bigger. Another temporary solution, earn an advanced degree. Go back to school. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard that one before. Just go back to school and get another degree, right?
Mhm.
So the pros about that is you can get a possible salary increase. And I say possible because it depends on which profession you're in. I was in education, our increases weren't that much. So just being honest. But the con about this is that this can cause an increase in student loan debt. And the cost of living may be worse while you're in school. For a lot of us that went to grad school, you're not going to be able to work as many hours when you're not in school. So you'll have to struggle there for those couple of years while you do go back to school. And the last one, job hop. This is another one that a lot of Gen Z kids have been doing, no fault of their own, staying at a company for a year or a couple of months and then going to another company so you can get that pay increase, right? Now, a lot of times this can be a generational thing. I think sometimes like those from an older generation, they look at that and they're saying, why are these kids not staying here for longer than 1 year? A lot of that has to do with cost of living. They know that they can get a higher increase in their pay if they leave that job after a year and they're hired by another company. That's how you get the biggest increase, by the way. It's leaving the company you're at and going to another one. So the pro with that is a salary increase. The con about that, though, is, as I mentioned, some employers are going to frown upon job hopping. When they look at your resume, someone will say, why were you only there for a year? And then there's the issue of retirement funds. So if you are investing in 401k, every time you choose to go to a different company, that is also going to be an issue. In some cases, you can just transfer it over. That can be complicated depending on which company you worked at. And in other cases, you may not be able to, and they'll tell you you have to cash out. We can have another discussion one day about 401k because there's studies that are showing that a lot of younger adults are choosing not to opt into a 401k because they can't afford it. But in the end, we need to look at long-term solutions. The first one is we need to demand a living wage. So as I said before, we have to change our focus. We cannot continue to just say, fight for 15 minimum wage. Again, we're asking politicians, we're begging them to give people the least amount you can pay a worker by law, right? So we need to ask for more. We need to demand a living wage. What is the method of doing this? We can do this on the state level or on the federal level. My advice, it might be easier to try to start at the states. I think we've seen here in Massachusetts, we're a ballot initiative state. We've passed a number of progressive measures here in Massachusetts because we're a ballot initiative state. So those are two different ways to do that, the method. And what are the pros? A living wage adjusts to the cost of living. That's the big one. One of the cons, corporations could increase prices. And I have to be honest with you about that. The moment they see that we are making more money, corporations could decide, let's increase the price of gas. Let's increase the price of milk. You see it right now at the grocery stores, right? So that's just an honest reality.
Now, to respond to this, and I think somebody like Sabi would probably also agree, this is why, a ballot initiative, a ballot measure, limiting how much of a percentage of a livable wage you can charge for some of these essential goods could also come into play. Now, somebody would say, well, that's regulating the market. Well, damn, yeah, because the thing is that what has been tearing us apart this entire time? And everybody can go, well, if you raise the prices of everybody's wages, that means everything's going to increase. Boo, it's been increasing this entire time. What the hell are you talking about? Federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour. It hasn't been raised since 2009. We're going into almost 20 years. So, yeah. Yes, limit how much they can charge, too. I think it's in China. They're not allowed to charge you more than 10% of your income for rent. If they can do it there, we can do it here. You know what I'm saying? You know. Anyway.
The second long-term solution, and this is a big one, we need to outlaw private equity firms from owning housing.
Mm-hmm.
That is probably one of the best methods that we can use. And how can we do this? It may be easier by the state level, and you can do it via ballot initiative, meaning you can run a ballot measure in any of your states, run a ballot measure that is going to outlaw private equity from owning housing, period.
So, because of due to the sake of time, I'm not going to be able to finish this, but I hope you guys are able to watch this presentation from Savvy, from the Community Church of Boston. That was actually a really good presentation. I was watching that before we went live, because it's really good. Because the thing is, it's like she talks about the pros and cons, as well as the short-term and long-term solutions. And the thing is, like with organizing, we're focused on the long term. We're focused on, we're focused on doing the building of the foundation now, so that other people can come in and build upon that too. And this is basically what the Black Panther Party did. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to build on top of what they did. They set the example. Now we're trying to actually, they set the blueprint. Now we're trying to lay the foundation. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this subject. So Michelle Lee says we need to all be identified as a person, a human being, and not identified as women or men. Let me see. Hang on. Let me get to this. Lord Sheck says perhaps all the cultural warriors should delay their struggles until everyone has housing. I think we can do both at the same time, because it's all connected, really. Let me see. Jacqueline says, why do they always blame workers for wanting higher wages just so they can survive, but they don't blame the landlords for their greed? That's also a really good question. And a lot of people, they become landlords because they're trying to get out of being impoverished or being close to poverty. So they end up exploiting other people in order to live a better life. So it's all connected. So with that being said, let me check for any Rumble rants. I don't think we have any. I think we're good on that. Oh, nope. We do have something. It's not a Rumble rant, but it's just as nice. Let me go here. Let me share my screen, and then we'll head on out. So thank you so much to iSchool One, is now a monthly supporter on Rumble. So thank you very much, iSchool One. Nice to have you. Appreciate it. Clap it up for iSchool One. All right, everybody. So with that being said, I think we're good. I'm going to head on out because I am running late. And look, like I always say to everybody, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them. Also, make sure to stand with people in solidarity who have suffered due to the carceral system. and also make sure to try to find an organization so you can organize and do things on the ground. With that being said, I got to get going. But thank you so much to everybody. Thank you to all the patrons. We have the updated list. Thank you so much for all that you do and helping keep the lights on. And thank you so very much to all the people who are constantly trying to make sure that they do whatever they can to leave the world better than they found it. And oh yeah, I forgot. Mwah, forehead kisses to every single one of you. And I will see y'all in the next one. Deuce.